Let's take a look through some of the morning's newspapers with the editor of Birmingham Live and Birmingham Mail, Graham Brown, and with the writer Benedict Spence. Now, I understand that we've just got Graham, so we'll get started with the paper review with Graham. Graham, let's take a little look at the Daily Express, page 6 and 7, and this is reaction to some stuff that Steve Barclay, the Health Secretary, was saying in the media round yesterday, that he thinks that unions had chose to harm patients. There's been a bit of a backlash to that from the unions.
Yeah, that's right. So I think the Health Secretary, I think, to direct quote him, said that there was a conscious decision to inflict harm on behalf of the unions. He's talking about the contingency planning ahead of the strikes. I think what he's trying to do here is to separate the unions from nurses and paramedics, who are obviously kind of the people who save our lives and really rather popular. In practice, they are the people who have voted for this strike action and who have seen a real term fall in their income. I think the most important part of this story is a quote from the government that says the country simply can't afford the RCN's huge pay demands. I think this is the crux of it, is that we have an economy which is ravaged, and they're not really in a place to do this. I think the problem they have is one of the fact that we all love nurses and paramedics. We saw paramedics leading the picket line yesterday to save people, and they don't have a pugnacious figure like a Mick Lynch, so they're having to say things like this to try and create one.
Thanks for that, Graham. And Benedict, you're with us. So let's go to the paper, the Metro, the page 2 that you've picked out. This is about the Taliban preventing women now from going to university. They already banned girls from going to school, even though there was a promise that they had changed.
Yeah, there was the Taliban PR machine went into full swing after the takeover in August last year to say that this was a new regime, that it wouldn't be like the old one, but of course girls were prevented from going to school. And now I think as much as everybody expected, they are being prevented from going to universities. It's an interesting little tidbit in this story. People were seeing this a lot on social media yesterday, which was that male students were walking out of universities and male academics were walking out of universities in protest. They were abandoning their exams in protest of the fact that that female students weren't being allowed in. But that's the reality, I'm afraid, of a military theocracy like the Taliban. They have their views. They aren't going to change them because it doesn't play well in the Western media. The optics aren't great. And I think that this was sadly an inevitability. And I think that given that we've been talking a lot about Ukraine and about military spending that's coming from the West going into Ukraine, I think it's something that we all should pause to think about, actually, relatively how little money the West was spending. It's a sizable chunk, but relative to what we're spending in Ukraine, it was a very small amount of money that we were spending in order to keep the Afghan government on its feet. And when you withdraw from that sort of situation, when you say that's it, no more support, things can go downhill very quickly, as we've seen in Afghanistan.
I suppose it's a sign as well of that threat of the withdrawal of aid as well, and the fact that it'll come back if you change hasn't worked, because obviously nothing has changed. All right, let's move on to Inside the Telegraph, and I want to start off with you, Graham, as a newspaper editor as well, because the layout of this really strikes me as fascinating. With the stories about government borrowing doubling to 22 billion, and then you've got a picture there. Oh, I don't think we've got the picture, unfortunately, but I've got it here as a hard copy, so if the director can get a shot of that. We've got a shot there of the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt shaking hands with someone from Saudi Arabia. So government borrowing doubles to 22 billion while Jeremy Hunt holds a meeting.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned before, the government's finances aren't in the best of shape, and this has always been the dichotomy, really, of the things in Qatar and so on about being kind of high-handed on with regard to moralities. When your economy is ravaged, you still need to pay the bills. We need to give nurses pay rises, etc., etc., etc. You're going to need to make friends wherever you can. When we're in we need to be in a stronger economic position so that we can be a kind of world leader in morality. But in practice, we're not in that position right now.
Yeah, and Benedict, just come in on that, because the deal that's being signed there is apparently looking towards a £1.6 billion deal with the Gulf state.
Well, I mean, the Gulf nations in general are a source of great wealth at the moment, and not just in terms of the natural resources that they have, but the money that they can put into the British economy. I mean, the thing is, what we need to bear in mind is even before the pandemic, even before the catastrophe, the cost of living crisis, and everybody started demanding more money, the UK was spending almost 10%, I think, a little under 9%. Of GDP on interest on its debts. That will have gone up more over the course of the last 3 years, and it really, I think, does hammer home the fact that we probably are in a recession. But it hammers home the fact, the importance actually of what Britain needs is growth right now, and it's had a stagnant decade compared to the other G7 countries and other equivalent economies. That growth just isn't there. And actually, if the UK is to continue to prosper, to be a first world country, it's to be a leading power. If it is to make the most of Brexit, it needs to get on board and get ahead with developing growth. And frankly, I think, of all the many things you could lay at the current government's doorstep, you have to look at who's been in power for the last decade and say there is an awful lot to answer there for the party that was once supposedly safe with the economy.
Yeah, questions to be answered. And let's just move on then, finally, Graham. We'll start with you on this one. And I don't know if you've been carolling yet. I was explaining to my son what Christmas carolling is all about. And this is a story in the Mail about changes to the lyrics of some Christmas carols. And I do love the headline. It did make me smile when I saw it. Cardinal and Carol Wokery. Get lost, ye meddling gentlemen. What's this all about?
Well, this is a modern Christmas tradition, isn't it? Which is writing stories and panicking about us ruining old-fashioned Christmas traditions. So there's also a modern tradition about using the word woke in every third story. This is about Cardinal Vincent Nichols, Britain's most senior Roman Catholic, who's worried about a threat to Christmas carols. Specifically, that song, God Rest You Merry Gentlemen. There was a Church of England service somewhere at which they added the line about women and their role in history. The Cardinal is concerned because he says that these rituals are really important and they shouldn't be affected by modern sensitivities. What I would say is I don't think equality is a modern sensitivity. I'm not sure it is. This may be woke, but I don't think that was a smart choice of words because I think probably equality is the thing that's here to stay.
Absolutely right. Okay, and we haven't got much time yet, so Benedict, I'll just ask you, have you been carolling yet? And what's your favourite carol?
I haven't been caroling. I'm not sure if it's a carol. I quite like the bells. Does that count as a carol?
I'm not sure it's a carol. I like the one about the little donkey. I'm not sure that's a carol either. Graham, Benedict, thank you both very much. Merry Christmas to you. Plenty more to come after the break.
Thank you.